Cloudflare rewrote their core in Rust. And then 53 days later, that Rust code took down darn near half of the internet. You hate to see it. You hate to see it happen. So here's the details, which are currently driving Rust zealots across the internet absolutely bonkers. They are twisting their brains into giant pretzels of mush, trying to justify all of this sorts of things and use this somehow as an example of how great Rust is. Gee, isn't Rust fantastic? That Rust code that took down half the internet. So here's the details. Here's all the details. On September 26th, 53 days before yesterday's outage, Cloudflare announced that they had rewritten the core of their system in memory-safe Rust. They touted this change as the second coming of Cloudflare. Cloudflare just got faster and more secure, powered by Rust. In fact, their September 26th announcement was more about how great and infallible and beautiful and wonderful and sexy and everything else that because of Rust than anything else. It was just the best. It could do no wrong, and so clearly they needed to rewrite everything in Rust. Flash forward to yesterday, again, 53 days later, and Cloudflare has that massive outage, which took down, darn near half the internet. I mean, you couldn't go to a website that wasn't impacted in some, well, you could. Non-Cloudflared websites, but there's so many systems that utilize Cloudflare that, oh man, it was impacting X, it was impacting half of the news and blog sites, it was impacting all sorts of everything. And it was all because of an error in that Rust code. And I want to show you exactly what it was. Because to their credit, Cloudflare actually made a post, a very detailed post about exactly what the error was, and with some code snippets so everyone can see exactly what the problem was. Kudos to them for doing that, by the way. That was a great way to handle this. So here's a snippet from their explanation of the November 18th outage. They put it under a section they called specifically memory pre-allocation. So it was a memory pre-allocation issue. Quote, each module running on our proxy service has a number of limits in place to avoid unbounded memory consumption and to pre-allocate memory as a performance optimization. In this specific instance, the bot management system has a limit on the number of machine learning features that can be used at runtime. Currently, that limit is set to 200, well above our current use of roughly 60 features. Again, the limit exists because for performance reasons, we pre-allocate memory for the features. When the bad file, of course, it's always the fault of a bad file, with more than 200, very naughty file, you bad file, with more than 200 features was propagated to our servers, this limit was hit, resulting in the system panicking. The Rust code that makes the check inside of Cloudflare's core and was the source of the unhandled error is shown below. And there she blows, right? Here's the Rust issue. So it was a memory issue. It wasn't the memory safe type of memory issue that Rust zealots like to, beat their chest and pound the tables about. It wasn't like dealing with like a memory pointer or something like that. It was about memory pre-allocation and bad error handling and the like. But it was a memory related issue. When I posted about this on X, I had to include a little bit about how it was a memory related issue just to poke the hornet's nest a little bit. And oh man, it caused the Rust zealots to lose their mind. They began screaming from the rooftops, that's not what we mean by memory safe. You don't understand, Lunduke. You don't understand. You must not know what it is. It was fantastic. It was glorious. I couldn't I couldn't ask for it to be any better. In fact, just to point this out, in Cloudflare's blog post, they actually make this statement. That quote, of course, no system is secure if used badly. It is easy to write code in Rust, which causes memory corruption, end quote. I just had to include that there because according to Cloudflare, quote, it's easy to write code in Rust, which causes memory corruption. Just had to include that there for no particular reason whatsoever. Now, what we've seen as soon as it came out that this error was in Rust, it caused all sorts of brain melting and exploding happening among the Rust evangelists and apologists of the world. Up until the moment it was learned that it was Rust which caused it, most of those same people were making statements like, oh, it's a DNS issue, right? Because whenever massive internet outages happen, I think most of us just assume it's a DNS related problem. Like people began posting those memes online of, 0 days since it was a DNS error that caused the outage, right? Everyone just assumed some sort of DNS related issue caused Cloudflare to go down. Now, of course, it wasn't DNS. It was problems in their newly written Rust code because they rewrote a working system in Rust and then boom, there was errors. Man, where have we heard that before? It keeps repeating itself over and over again to an almost ridiculous degree. And so then the same people who were posting, oh, it was DNS issues, now it was Rust. They quickly came out with every possible justification for why the issue wasn't Rust itself, but was something else. And one of the big justification in their minds for why it wasn't Rust is that, quote, it isn't Rust's fault. It's a skills issue. I'm quoting myself here, but I'm paraphrasing what they say. It's a skills issue. The Cloudflare developers simply weren't good at writing Rust. A lot of people are saying this. In fact, if you search through social media and blog posts and even podcasts this morning, you'll find a constant steady stream of people talking about how it's a skills issue. Oh, the problem's not Rust. If you write really good Rust code, it's perfect. It's infallible. The problem here is it's a skills issue. These are bad developers, bad developers. So I went and looked. At the announcement post from back in September, where Cloudflare announced that they were, porting so much of their infrastructure over to Rust. And I'm going to read it, a little bit of it to you now, just so you can kind of have this in your head. Quote, "We weren't starting from scratch. We've previously blogged about how we have replaced another one of our legacy systems being built in the Rust programming language. We've also blogged about Oxy, our internal framework for building proxies in Rust. We write a lot of Rust, and we've gotten pretty good at it. We built our core FL2 in Rust and Oxy and built a strict module framework to structure all the logic in their core." So quote, again, we write a lot of Rust and we've gotten pretty good at it. And looking at the systems of Cloudflare, they're large. I mean, these aren't trivial little systems, right? They're large. They handle a great deal of data. And, I have every reason to believe that, yeah, as far as Rust programmers go, they probably are pretty doggone good at it. But the Rust evangelists, the apologists, are out there right now declaring that it's a skills issue. Well, if it's a skills issue, then that means that no Rust code is safe to use. Because if this is truly a skills issue, and we're talking about some of the most experienced Rust developers on planet Earth, then no one is capable of writing usable Rust code. Do you see what I'm saying here? It's just that doesn't fly. So is it a skills issue? No, it's not a skills issue. I also wanted to point out, I think this is interesting for what the future holds. Cloudflare is planning to migrate more of their systems to Rust, including one current Nginx service, with more Rust-based replacements planned for the coming months. What is this here? We have one last service to completely migrate. The HTTP and TLS terminated box from the diagram way at the top of the post that they're referencing here, just another component of their system, is also an Nginx service, and we're midway through a rewrite in Rust. We're making good progress on this migration and expect to complete it early next year. So sometime in the next couple of months, even more of Cloudflare will be ported over to Rust. Oh my heavens. Now, over the coming days, the Rust apologists are going to be out in force. I mean, there's no stopping that. This is going to be a major issue for them, because it's not just that this was one problem. It's that it's been a steady stream of problems. It's been one problem after another because of the constant influx of big projects which we rely on, enterprise grade, battle tested software. What's happening over with Cloudflare, the underpinnings of Debian and Ubuntu, Git is moving over. I mean, there's so many things that are moving over, and so many of them that have already shipped have been causing massive issues. And I want to point out something here. This has been a common thing, a refrain that software that gets written in Rust is inherently less buggy. I posted this some time back. Quote, Rust code has less bugs than other languages. Once Rust code is written, it's perfect. It's infallible, end quote. And that's me paraphrasing others, right? Like this particular quote here, talking about abandoned crates in Rust. And think of a crate, if you don't use Rust at all, think of a crate like a library or something. The crate isn't abandoned, it's complete. No crate is ever abandoned, they're just complete. Rust has a lot less bugs near the end of development, whereas in other languages, there is always an odd bug to keep activity on the project going. End quote. And this is a common refrain you hear among Rust zealots and apologists, is that Rust is, because of the design of Rust, it's so good that once you finish writing your code, it has less bugs than other code, right? It's, in some cases, they'll say it almost doesn't have any bugs. You see this repeated constantly. I mean, the Lunduke Journal has quoted many of the major developers and project managers talking about this sort of thing, that Rust code is infallible. There is a fevered, unreasonable belief in the superiority of the Rust code. And I've talked about this in the past, but I think this is important and worth reiterating. Rust isn't a terrible programming language. It really isn't. In fact, I don't like Rust all that much. There's some parts that are good and some parts that I don't like. And there's a whole lot of languages I prefer. But the reality is, if Rust was the only programming language available, it would be fine. I mean, you can get everything, for the most part, you want done in Rust. The problem is this unreasonable belief in the superiority of Rust is causing a handful of very important problems that are multiplying each other, that are exacerbating the other problems. One of those problems is that the belief in the ultimate superiority, the infallibility of Rust, is causing every project to just say, well, let's rewrite everything in Rust. It's going to be faster. It's going to be more secure. It's going to be memory safe. Repeat after me. Rust is memory safe, right? Over and over again. And so they're all jumping on the bandwagon. It seems like darn near every major project is moving over to Rust, or making Rust a hard requirement going forward, because of that religious, almost fevered belief about all of it. And that is made worse by the belief that the Rust code itself that people are writing is inherently less buggy, that it is inherently better. Once Rust code is done, it's less buggy. That's causing a whole lot of lazy development. That's causing a lot of people to believe that, well, yeah, the Rust code is so unbuggy that, well, I don't need to worry about certain classes of errors. I don't need to worry as much about certain types of logic and memory management issues. When the fact is, in some cases with Rust, you need to worry about it more than with some other programming languages. That's just, every language is different. You got to know the pluses and the minuses, and you have to know what you need to really focus on. But because people believe in the Rust superiority, they're writing worse code for a larger number of main projects, and they're shipping them without sufficient testing because, again, there's a belief in the Rust superiority. So they're writing code too quickly. They're pumping it out without good testing. They're rewriting battle-tested, well-functioning enterprise-grade code, and they're just tossing it out. Oh, that C code that worked so well. Oh, that C++ or Lua or whatever code. Let's just chuck it out and let's replace it with Rust. There wasn't a good reason to do that unless you believed in Rust as if it were holy scripture, as if it was your own religion. And this is where the big problem comes in. All of this piles together with code that is good code is tossed out, untested, quickly written code, which is written in a lot of cases by people who believe that their code is going to be inherently less buggy because they use the holy programming language, and is shoved out far and wide to every major enterprise project on Earth. And what happens? You have bugs. You have problems, like what we saw with Ubuntu. Quote, this is just me quoting myself here, but multiple serious security vulnerabilities found in the Rust clone of sudo, which shipped with Ubuntu 25.10, the most recent release. Not little vulnerabilities. We're talking about the disclosure of passwords and total bypassing of authentication. In fact, we're getting new reports of showstopper grade issues every few days on the Rust-based clones like sudo, du, date, and others within Linux, which were forced to ship in Ubuntu before they were fully tested, which is, of course, exactly what was predicted. But never fear, at least those Rust clones are memory safe, right? Over and over and over again, we're seeing it. In fact, these companies are having to admit, if a bit in a funky way, in a roundabout way, that the early forced inclusion of the Rust-based clone software is in fact causing massive issues at the enterprise level. Quote, again, quoting myself here, the forced inclusion of Rust-based core utility clones in Ubuntu was going so badly that Ubuntu just added the option of a 15-year support contract, 15-year, for the pre-Rust versions of Ubuntu. And those Rust clones were cited as the reason by their vice president of engineering. This is about as close to an admission of, whoops, we messed up, as we are likely to see. It also suggests that either significant Ubuntu customers or the team at the Ubuntu parent company do not anticipate the kinks to be worked out in the Rust core utility clones anytime soon. This is a big deal. This is a major, major issue. And it's not going to go away because we're seeing so many different projects, massive companies, open source projects, foundations, and the like, adopting Rust too quickly. And this is very, very important to remember. Rust is not a shipping stable programming language yet. That doesn't mean that Rust is inherently bad. It really doesn't. But what it means is Rust is not stable. And what I mean by that is not, oh, Rust crashes. No. What I mean by that is Rust is still changing dramatically, not just the compiler, which is changing dramatically, but also the language itself. Brian Kernighan, the Unix legend, recently made a statement where he's like, look, I'm paraphrasing, but I tried to program something in Rust. He did not like it. He stopped tinkering with it and then came back a few weeks later to try and kind of finish his little, sample Rust program up. And a whole bunch of things had changed. So much had changed that his old code was kind of pointless. He kind of needed to start from scratch. And that really underscores the fact that Rust is not a stable programming language yet. That doesn't make it bad. In fact, that may be a good thing. Rust could use a little bit more bake time. Maybe it's going to be a fantastic programming language when it's done, but it's not ready yet. It's certainly not ready for replacing these massive mission critical enterprise type systems like Cloudflare, the underpinning of all the core utilities throughout all the Linux distributions and Git and on and on and on. It's not ready yet because it's not stable yet. So you have an unstable, ever-changing language, an unstable, constantly shifting compiler, And where all the developers have a fever dream belief that it is handed down from on high and can do no wrong. And the moment they write their code, it's done and perfect and never needs to be touched again because it has no bugs, because it's holy. You've got a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing it on desktop systems, on server systems, we're seeing it on Cloudflare, and over and over and over again. Take some time, finish your stinking language, solidify it, ship your 1.0 of your language with your 1.0 of your compiler, make it rock solid with a stable reference platform that you can point to, a reference design you can point to, and say, okay, that's the stable language. Now build upon that, carefully understanding the pluses and minuses of both the language and the compiler, understanding the drawbacks and the inherent limitations within it that are both good and bad, but you need to understand them in order to write code that is, well, is ready and capable of powering something as massive and heavily relied upon as Cloudflare. Now, building that in, a language that has been around for decades and used in similar systems, more like a C or whatnot, makes more sense for now. If you, the Rust zealots, really believe that Rust's ultimate destiny is to take over the universe with infallible code, okay, great. That's crazy talk, but great. Finish your language and compiler first. There's so many issues. Now, over the coming days, they're going to be spazzing out. They're going to, in fact, people were literally attacking me about the Cloudflare Rust problem before I ever even mentioned it. Before I mentioned it, there were people on chat groups and forums and social media yelling about, oh man, Lunduke's gonna get to talk about this and he's gonna get it wrong. He's gonna say Rust is at fault here and it's not. Rust is perfect. Before I ever even said anything. And since I've said a few things, oh man, they have lost their noodles. It's kind of entertaining. It's entertaining and expected. Of course, they're going to lose their noodles. They're going to yell about this. They're going to try and pick apart and cherry pick this particular show. And they're going to find one random quote to take out of context. And they say, see, Lunduke doesn't understand Rust because Rust can't have problems with memory. And then they're going to have an aneurysm and die. It's going to be awful. There's going to be a lot of people dying from aneurysms in the Rust community over the next few days. Thank you for the Lunduke Journal subscribers for making the work I do possible. Go to lunduke.com. You can subscribe for free all over the place. X and Substack, and there's a podcast RSS feed, and YouTube, and Locals, and Rumble, and you can even get the DRM free MP4 downloads if you're a subscriber. Oh my gosh, it's all over the place. And if you want to become a paid subscriber to the Lunduke Journal, which is totally optional, again, head to lunduke.com and scroll down. A ton of options on the bottom right-hand side, monthly, yearly, and even lifetime subscription options, which if you become a lifetime subscriber, you have the choice of being added to this wall. Now, most people don't get added to the Lunduke Journal Lifetimers wall. The wall of shame, the wall of heroes, I don't know what you want to call it. I don't add anyone here unless they specifically email me and ask. And as you can see, it's getting quite full, but hey, there's always room for more, and maybe we'll need to have a second one very, very shortly here. But thank you to all the Lunduke lifetime subscribers and monthly and yearly subscribers. Just thank you for allowing me to do this sort of work, to bring out the as I put it on the website, the last bastion of truly independent tech journalism, ad-free, big tech-free, non-woke, audience-supported, actual tech journalism. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.